Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Adam Golov, Marketing and Communications Manager at Data Conversion Laboratory, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know we will allow time at the end of the webinar for questions and answers. So please write your questions in the chat area as they come to mind. If we don't have time to answer them all, we will make them available on our website. Next slide, please. Today we are thrilled to introduce Dr. Joanne Hacklos, President of Comtech Services, a content management and information design firm based in Denver, Colorado, which she founded in 1978. Joanne is also the Director of the Center for Information Development Management, a membership organization focused on content management and information development best practices. Dr. Hacklos and colleagues are called upon by corporate executives worldwide to consult on strategies for content management, development, and organizational management, product interface design, customer studies, web and traditional information architecture, and tools and technology selection. For more than 33 years, Dr. Hacklos has addressed audiences internationally on subjects ranging from content management, project management, effective interfaces, and information, minimal information products, usability testing, and online and web-based information, to managing the information design and development process. Her workshops are dedicated to enhancing the practices and products that will best promote customer satisfaction. We're also thrilled to introduce Mark Rose, founder of Data Conversion Laboratory, and is a recognized authority on XML implementation and document conversion. Mark is President and CEO of DCL and also serves as project executive with overall responsibility for resource management and planning. Prior to founding DCL in 1981, Mark was with the consulting practice of Arthur Young & Company. Mark has a BS in engineering from Columbia University and an MBA from NYU. He has also taught at the New York University Graduate School of Business, the New School, and Pace University. Mark is a frequent speaker on the topic of automated conversions to XML and SGML. Next slide, please. For those of you who are not familiar with DCL, we convert and organize content to create electronic documents, populate databases, publish on the web, and basically get it ready for tomorrow's technology. Next slide, please. DCL Services help you refine your document conversion strategy, identify document redundancy, extract metadata, and transform legacy and future documents for real needs, today and in the future. Next slide, please. DCL spans across all industries.
Okay, thank you, Adam. This is Joanne, and I wanted to welcome all of you today. I noticed that a number of the people who have joined us today also took part in the survey, so I'm sure you're interested in what the results are going to show. Just before we get started, I want to mention that we're all packing up here to head to the Content Management Strategies Conference, DITA North America in Reston, Virginia, that begins on Sunday evening this week. I'm pleased, of course, to announce our keynote speaker this year, David Weinberger, from the Harvard's Berkman Center for Internet and Society. David is going to talk about knowledge in the networked age, and I'm very, very excited about his participation in the conference this year. I also want to remind all of you to save the date, put it on your calendars, that the 2016 Best Practices Conference will be held once again in Santa Fe, New Mexico in September, and we will be coming out with a call for proposals and presentations for that conference probably around the beginning of May. So be sure to look toward that as you get ready for your fall season, and put it on your calendar now. Also, I want to announce that, we're going to have two presentations at the conference in Reston, Virginia in next week from the DCL folks. Brian Trombley, partnering with the Bob Gardner and Judy Weinzel from Cybex are going to be talking about small teams using the DITA standard for XML authoring, which I think is going to be interesting for lots of people who think that DITA is only for big companies. And Mark also will be talking with Charles Dowdle of AGCO about the AGCO's move to a multinational and multi-language DITA implementation for the machine industry. And I think if you're coming from anybody who is creating content in multiple languages all over the world, you'll be really interested in that presentation. It's going to be very exciting. We also have some upcoming workshops that we wanted to let you know about. My colleague and Vice President of Operations here at Comtech, Dawn Stevens, is offering a number of workshops coming up in the next couple of months. She's going to be in the UK doing our Advanced Reuse Strategies workshop, in Atlanta for the Agile Project Management, and then 2 workshops in Belgium, one on minimalism and one on content management strategies. So if you're part of our European contingent or you're interested in Agile or any of these, just let us know. You can find the information at comtech-serve.com. Also, upcoming webinar in our series, I know Mark probably has some as well. Nanad Fertula and Galina Key of Datex are going to be talking about implementing lean methodologies to eliminate waste in your document production factory. So Mark, anything you want to say by way of introduction before we get started?
Well, just I think this upcoming conference next week is going to be very exciting, and I think we do have a very good, Charles and I have a very good discussion to be had about how DITA has become so important in minimizing their content and improving the way they can use foreign languages, which is a big issue for a multinational company like AGCO. And no, there's some very exciting things that are in this survey that I think we should get onto. I mean,
okay.
There are changes in the industry.
Okay, let's start talking about this. I want to start out just by saying who responded. You know, we asked people to roll in the organization, and of course we have a lot of writers, information developers who are responding to this. About 56% of the respondents, and people do have multiple roles, so we'll add up to more than 100% here. We had a good showing of managers, as we usually do, and almost an equal number of information architects and people who refer to themselves as content strategists. I think I added that recently to our survey because people were telling me in comments that they had other titles. We also had about a third of the respondents who said they have an editor role. Other roles included publishers, support staff, customer service, people in learning and training. So a really wide representation of people in the organization, looking at are interested, in weighing in on what the trends might be in this field. Moving forward, we also asked about the technologies that people represented, and it was interesting because we usually get a very high percentage from computer software. This year it was down a bit, which I think was interesting, and I think only down because we were so well represented by some of the other industries. We had people from computer hardware, an increased number from the telecommunications industry, which I think does reflect a change in tactics and strategy by telecommunications, really looking in some cases at the first time at new ways of publishing information than they have in the past, since it's been a pretty traditionally focused customer base. And I think, we'll see in the results that that's changing. We also had good representation from engineering firms, from publishing organizations, from finance, and then at smaller percentages, people from healthcare, medical devices, semiconductor, the machine industry, banking, aerospace, and many, many more. It's really interesting to look at, this kind of great range of people who are interested in this issue about, future direction. One of the interesting conclusions, and this seems to be heading in the kind of in the same direction, or at least of the people who respond to this survey, Mark, I think we see this quite a bit, that a lot of the people responding are using their first choice tool is an XML editor using the DITA standard. Or sometimes we also asked about, are using S1000D for aircraft or DocBook. But people are really using at least our group of people here really focused on moving to XML.
Right, which I think is a big surprise when you look in other parts of the industry. I think people are gradually getting used to working in XML editors, which people are resisting for many years. So I mean, I'm seeing even in other parts of the industry, people are starting to use where like copy editing was almost always done in tools like Word. Now people are starting to doing their copy editing in XML. So I think there is a movement where people are first the tools are probably getting a little bit better, and also people are getting used to being able to work outside their comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think there is a trend there.
We're certainly seeing, I just I'm just in the process of updating a study I did last year, a review of what I call the easy editing solutions for XML, and it's really amazing. I think for the most part, if people are doing, reasonably straightforward kind of writing, you can't even tell you're using XML anymore. We also, of course, have our, the interest, the first choice of Madcap Flare, which continues to be a product that people rely on. We've got a substantial number using unstructured Adobe FrameMaker. I hope they're starting to think about structure. People using HTML editors, Adobe InDesign, of course, for some, for different kinds of publications. We also saw in the comments section, or the question about others, we saw a representation from some of the newer systems that people are using, like Confluence and Markdown. We also saw use of WordPress, which is an HTML web design system. We saw AuthorIt. I had one great comment that said, we're using Excel, and then the person put in parentheses, believe it or not. And, I actually knew some groups in the past who used Excel to write documentation. And then we're seeing other tools that are being used because people are providing more illustrations or perhaps providing video. So we're seeing Camtasia and Photoshop and Visio as tools that we're adding to this list. So I can see in next season's trend survey we should be looking at what other things people are using besides text for developing content.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting that so many people are using PowerPoint. I mean, it's not just an add-on. A lot of people are using PowerPoint to prepare materials, and I think because a lot of people are comfortable with being able to move things around and the visualization that's available. So I think, it's not a surprise, but I think it's interesting it shows up this high on your tool survey.
And then I also want to point out the XML editors include structured FrameMaker. So I included that in the actual question, as an alternative XML editor. So structured FrameMaker too. Okay, let's see. Whoops. One of the questions we were very interested in is what formats are people publishing their content in? Because this is we're more interested, I think, in this survey in how you're getting your content to your customers rather than how you're creating it. It's not really I think anymore, maybe 5 years ago, a survey about how you're creating content, because we pretty much know what that is these days, but how you publish continues to be a really interesting issue. And one of the things that we find is that how people publish today versus how they intend to publish in the next 2 or 3 years is really an interesting thing to keep track of. What we see, of course, is that at least this year we're seeing quite a massive reduction in the use of print publications. I'm not surprised at that. Print is expensive. It's expensive to ship as well as expensive to create. And I think we're seeing less and less that's being created in print, in part because we know that when people get those print copies, they throw them away. I know one study by a medical device manufacturer who was at the time, providing a print manual with every tiny device that they sold. A typical hospital would order hundreds, and the hospitals were telling them when they did a study of it that they were throwing 99 of 100 away of these manuals because they didn't need 99 of them. They barely needed one, since all the information was also available online. So consequently, of course, we're seeing this continued preference for PDF publishing. HTML and help systems continue to be important ways of publishing today, but we also see representation from YouTube and wikis and learning management systems, the LMSs, mobile devices, mobile apps. I differentiated there. And then one of the things that is really a new capability, and that's what we call the dynamic publishing systems. And I'll go into that just in a minute a little bit more. But this is what we saw in terms of formats being published today. Now, what does this mean, right? At 53%, we are way, way down from previous years. And it's even farther down and decreasing in the intent going out 2 or 3 years. The move to print, the move away from print is pretty significant. And, and I think it's just part of our, digital environment in which people, in the way people look for the answers to their questions, or try, they don't try to find the manual that's in some drawer someplace, and probably difficult to keep up to date. So let's take a look then at what happened. What is the direction we see people going? And what we are looking at is that today we're seeing that change in PDFs, right? And we're seeing an additionally high number of changes into the addition of HTML. And we're seeing also an increase in the move to dynamic help, which is something that I'm really interested in tracking, since I think it's really something that's quite significant. In 3 years, look at the way the publishing choices are moving. One is that we see a decrease, although a small one, in PDFs. Now, some of you I know attended the Demise of the Manual webinar I gave last week, in which we talked about some of the problems that people are seeing with PDFs. Although there is a strong contingent of organizations that say our customers want this. But we'll talk about that, in context of dynamic publishing, which I think gives us many, many more options to look at. We're also seeing, of course, an increase in what we call static HTML, so that we can put onto a website instead of having just a PDF of the manual, which we expect people to download in order to use. We can provide HTML of that same document, and that document might be viewed online. Although many HTML documents to be viewed online are rather awkward and on somebody's website, if they're not sort of organized well for easy viewing. And that's where this direction of dynamic publishing, I think, comes into play in a really significant way.
Yeah, I think it's also, I just a comment here. First of all, I think just in terms of the way the question is printed on which ways that you publish content, it's not just as people are using less print. It seems that there's more organizations that are not using print at all.
Yes.
Which I think is pretty significant, and I see that because I don't get too many manuals with anything anymore. So so people are getting used to the idea of not having print, and companies are doing away with it. So it's not just less print, but companies, just whole organizations that are cutting out a print function.
Right.
The other is that this is really a replacement area. I mean, as they went away from print, they've moved on to PDF files, and as they're reducing the PDF files, they're moving to more of a static HTML, because that has advantage. A PDF file has limitations because you can it looks good on a large screen, but doesn't look so good on a mobile device and things like that. So that's where the movement to static HTML. And I think what's happening now is dynamic publishing is another replacement for the static HTML, because if you've got a lot of data, you don't really want to constantly be renewing all those HTML files. This way, you just do the ones that you need, and you can constantly and you can be constantly modifying and not worrying about it. So I think this if we look at this 3 years from now, I suspect PDF will be down, and HTML might be, some of the PDF will go through HTML, but then a bunch of the HTML will be moving to dynamic publishing systems.
Right. Yeah. So I think that, I'm really excited about dynamic publishing. And I think we're finally getting to a point where we can do this, because we've got a move toward better tools. I wrote my book, Content Management for Dynamic Web Delivery, in 2002. And I'll tell you, it wasn't a bestseller. I think because, like a lot of times for me, I tend to be ahead of the trends, ahead of where people are at that time. But what we're seeing in the last about 3 years, we have seen this introduction of what I call a website appliance. There are at least 5 new products out in the last year that provide dynamic publishing solutions, some of them coming from the content management developers, and others coming from groups that have been influential in the data space or in structured authoring space. In our survey this year said in 2016 about 35% of the companies reporting were using dynamic publishing. The companies in the future went up to 45%. So what's behind this, right? One is a move to topic-based authoring. We're creating topics. Well, can we give people topics? Can we say to somebody, do a search here? We have a faceted search. We have a vastly improved search mechanism. We've got a taxonomy underlying that search system. We have really good metadata in place. We have the ability to search to a single topic, because that's what our customers want, right? They want to have a topic that answers their question. And maybe they want some links to other topics that are related if they need more, if they need to know more. Well, with a topic-based authoring, we can do that. We can also, in a dynamic publishing system, show that topic in its context. So if you want to go to the previous topic or the next topic into a table of contents, you see where the topic might be, but there you're still getting that topic that promises to be the best answer to your question. And what can we do with dynamic publishing? I think what people are finding out is that they know who's logging in. They said, this person has this version of the product. We're not going to give them documentation from the last version or from other versions. We're just going to give them what's relevant to them at that time. We know which products they own. We know which parts of the products they've turned on in their systems. We know perhaps what role they have in the organization. And if we have role-specific content, we can deliver that personalization as well. We can also let people add their own content for their own use. We can let them comment on content, and we can let them create their own PDFs if that's what they want to take away with them. So dynamic publishing, I mean, I'm so excited about this, and I'm very pleased to see the increase. I think it's also because we've got these very well constructed appliances to allow us to place dynamic publishing into our websites without having to ask our IT teams to have to create something from scratch. Mark, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that I think there's also, part of what's driving dynamic publishing is certainly the tools being available, so it becomes feasible to do, which 2-3 years ago was just much more difficult. But the other is that I think just in every technology area, things are getting more and more complex because of all the personalization that's available. So there's just no one handbook that can work anymore. Just think about like your own smartphone. You have your own apps which are different than anybody else's. You've set your settings in different ways. There's so many differences that's on there that that just one set of instructions just doesn't work anymore. And so, and I think that's true across the board in medical devices, in agricultural equipment, and in just about any area. There's just so much room for personalization that it's impossible to keep up unless you go to a more dynamic way of getting information out there. And you pair that with multiple languages and globalization.
Right.
And this this number is just going to go up and up every year, and a print book just doesn't work anymore in many areas.
Well, I think it's also why we're seeing a huge increase in the interest in our taxonomy training, and helping people build taxonomies, because they're finding they've got to do a better job at this personalization, getting the right content to somebody. We're also seeing a couple of other interesting things. Everything about mobile applications, mobile devices, YouTube as a source of information, the use of wikis that allow people to comment and, on their own, customers to come in and comment. All of these have increased in the last year. The 41% across the board. I think I kept typing that same number. Because all of these numbers, this is my 3-year, so 2015, 14, 15, and 16, and you can see this increase going steadily for using these other ways of presenting content. And but we want to explore this in a few more ways. So we're thinking about, what are our customers asking for? So we asked that question. I'm always interested in this response because I really hope that people in information development of all sorts spend more time understanding their customers. And of course now we have ways with analytics and online information to get a better understanding of than we've ever had before. And here's what you are reporting, right? 64% of customers are looking for better, more searchable content. Well, that speaks to our statement about dynamic publishing. 51, over half now, want learning videos. They want videos that say, how do I do this? Show me. They want information on their mobile devices. A third of them are still interested in embedded help and topic-based content. And 24%, one quarter say we want an opportunity to hear from other customers. And that's a pretty contentious demand and desire, because so many companies we find don't provide that.
Right. I think what's also, I mean, just in terms of the social media, I mean, people are getting used to, in almost every industry, there's various user groups and various groups that are interested in the product that are out there, and the companies that do best, I think, are the ones that are constantly monitoring those and helping them out, and information isn't just coming out from the, from that instruction manual, even on the website anymore. People are asking, how do I do this? And another reason that you need topic-based information, so that you can send that information out when somebody is asking in a user group.
Right.
Otherwise all kinds, you get all kinds of comments out there until somebody comes and says, well, this is the way you really can do this. And if it's coming from somebody who sounds authoritative, that really makes the company look much better, and really just really helps get information out there very quickly.
And I think I mentioned to you the other day that we're seeing companies now using Twitter to get that topic-based content across.
Yeah, no, it's all these devices, and I think just going back to I think video information has just become a way we're used to working. I mean, YouTube has transformed the universe in that way. And very many times you say, well, if I could just see a 3-minute video of how to do this, that'll answer all the questions. So
Right.
I think, so we're looking at, whereas companies used to think in terms of just text and text topics, you really have all these, there's just an acceptance of that videos are important, that that voice is important, all those other kind of things become important. So this really feeds that whole trend of being able to get information out in a dynamic way.
And I'm happy to say that we're going to have a couple of presentations on the use of video at the conference next week. And we're also going to have a training session to teach people how to create videos. So I'm really excited about that. I know David's on the call today, and if you are interested in learning how to do videos, there's still places open. You can still come. We asked a new question, Mark. We didn't know what we'd get from this, but we wanted to know, I've been interested in this, and the reason I've been interested in cloud-based publishing is that I'm being asked by the companies that I work with and the managers I work with, tell us what other people are doing about the cloud. We're thinking about this. We're thinking about putting content into a cloud-based system, or our product is in a cloud-based system, and we're putting our content there too. How do we do it more effectively? Who's setting the standards on this? Where are people doing some interesting things? We're having a hard time collecting detail about this, by the way, but we did ask this question in the survey, cloud-based products, the customization of content to go along with products where it's difficult to tell, or it would be difficult to tell under other circumstances exactly what version of a complex product customers are working with, because they can select different aspects of the product, personalizing the product. So there's a complex audience dynamic. I got a lot of reaction in the comments to this question that people didn't know what it was, or didn't know what we meant, thought we meant content management system, a SaaS-based content management system, which we didn't mean, or what the issues were. 11% said that all their information is cloud-based today. That's a small but significant number. 58% said none. They weren't doing this at all. Many were confused. So we're going to continue to pursue this, and we certainly are looking for companies that would take part in a study, a more in-depth study of what cloud-based publishing is all about. So if there are people interested in that, I'd sure like to hear from them, because I think this is going to be an interesting topic moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's just, just in terms of the results you were getting, I don't think people are clear today on what cloud-based means. So, so it really probably varies all over the board for people who say, oh yeah, sure, we're there, to people who say, well, even though, and I think the answer is probably in between. I mentioned the other day that, I mean, what we used to call time sharing is also cloud-based.
Right.
So, you know, and thin computing, and there's all kinds of terms we've used in the past where you had some big computer someplace out there, we didn't call it the cloud, so you know, what does a cloud have to be outside someplace, or is it a main system that's even inside the building that's being used, but it's being remotely accessed and all computing is done remotely? So I think there just is confusion on just what all this means, and that might be something to clarify in a further survey, so people are really answering the same questions.
Yeah, and well, I think I would love to see us do you know, a study of companies that are doing this or think they are, and really trying to define what it is and how it seems to be making a difference. So I think, you know, that would be something neat to pursue. Electronic publishing, of course, continues to be the preference. People are moving to that. 34% of respondents said that 90 to 100% of their content is now delivered electronically. That number continues to go up. Only 8% of our respondents said they deliver no content electronically. And I'm going to have to make a list of what those companies are, because I think it'd be worthwhile talking to them about that. Why, you know, what's going on with their information. 38% claim less than half of their content is in electronic form. So again, you know, there seems to be some hesitation about electronic delivery, and I think it would be worthwhile really understanding more about it. We did ask for more information. It didn't seem, a few years ago in this survey, we found out that it was primarily cost. People were saying, I don't have the money to make this switch. You know, we're delivering paper, but now we find they're not delivering paper. So it isn't cost anymore, since I think they're saving tons of money by not delivering paper. So 68% are saying cost is not an issue, although, you know, that's still only 2/3. Still, we have about a third saying it is an issue of cost, and it's a cost issue about conversion, Mark. You know, they feel stuck. And, you know, we know that we can do a better job in helping them convert this stuff into you know, electronic ready information.
Right. There's also a lot of, I think, perceived fears of cost, because there's sort of like all that stuff is out there. If it's been on paper, it was published 5 or 10 years ago. It's now that it's just like it's like somebody's attic, and you're afraid to just go in there because you don't know what's behind all the piles. So a lot of times, just putting together an inventory and just really laying out what's there takes away a lot of those fears. It's, like in everything, like in all other areas, I mean, just some advanced, an initial planning stage really clarifies a lot of things. And frequently, it's not cost that's the issue. It's really other things. Maybe, you know, maybe you just have to throw some stuff out, and you don't need any of that stuff. But I think that's sort of like what I've seen a lot of times.
Well, I know. Last year I had a lot of family photos put onto a CD by a person who was expert at that, and it came out really well. But it took me like 3 years to decide to do it, mostly because I had to sit there and figure out which photos I wanted to keep. So it is really that, that going into your portfolio and saying, what's important here and how are we going to do these things. And in a lot of cases, if you're pursuing minimalism, some of that old stuff you're going to say, oh, we're just going to leave it alone and not touch it anymore. So don't feel you have to change everything.
Right. On the other hand, sometimes you find that old stuff that you haven't even been selling or making money for years actually is very valuable, but it's just it's sitting in a warehouse, it's dead. Once it's made electronic, it suddenly becomes a new asset that wasn't there before.
That's
so
right.
You really have to evaluate all those pieces.
We asked people why, if their content was not ready. Our content is sort of ready, was the answer we got in many cases. And I think it points to exactly what we've been saying. 42% said our content is sort of ready. 30% said no, it wasn't ready. But the really funny result was 28% said we don't know. And I think that's the problem we're talking to. You've got to figure it out. We asked about other barriers, right? And I think this is kind of telling because I think these numbers actually, these two large percentages, right? Insufficient budget and insufficient time really mean the same thing. The low numbers were prior negative experience. That doesn't seem to be a factor. And lack of knowledge, although it comes out, it was about 28%, still doesn't factor really well. What they're saying is insufficient time for converting in-house. It's insufficient budget to finance the cost of that staff time. Legal requirements to deliver to paper. PDF is considered good enough. Need to develop new content, people said. Don't have enough people to do that. Manager doesn't understand. We're afraid of change. Resistance to change in our group. Lack of understanding. I love this one. Lack of understanding that a wiki is not a content management system. Cut and paste is not reuse. I think the comments were amusing and sort of frustrating for people to say we're just frustrated by a lack of understanding in our organizations, not only by management but also by our own staff, that we have to rethink about how we're creating this content.
Right, and I think hiding behind a lot of things is just a fear of change. What's going to happen when this changes? What happens when we move a new system? So I think that whole, and it's natural to feel that when things are working, why change them? And I think that's a lot behind a lot of these questions, regardless of what they're answering. But I think it's very telling that the previous slide you mentioned that. Cost is not much of an issue, yet the two biggest barriers are really cost-related, insufficient budget and insufficient staff time. Although I would say that insufficient staff time is a little bit different than insufficient budget, because frequently people feel that when it comes to doing the things that are needed to change over, they've got to have only their internal staff can possibly do it, and they don't possibly have enough time.
Right.
Because they're so busy with everything else. So part of this is really an education of maybe those tasks can be split out, and other people with more expertise in different facets of it can handle it rather than having it to be done internally with internal staff.
I think exactly so. We've asked each year, what about the competition? Because in a move to these new forms of publishing, we think it's really important that for any company, trying to make a business case to management, you've got to know what the competition's doing. And, is the competition, we're asking, is the competition ahead of you? About 23% of you said Yes, they are. Now that's really interesting. If you know that, another, larger percentage said 42% said no, they're not. I hope you really know the answer to that question rather than guessing. But the honest, the honest people who said we have no idea, what they should be doing is finding out, what's going on. Now, sometimes it's a little hard to tell because the competition is hiding their information behind a firewall. But if you look at these two combined, over 50% of the respondents said we either don't know what our competition is doing or they're ahead of us, is absolutely scary. I mean, that's information that you should be using in your business case to make a change, to get funding and to get some help in doing these sorts of things that you need to do to convert your content into a form that's going to be more usable.
Yeah, and it is a little scary because, if you look back over the last 5, 10, 15 years, like entire industries have been decimated because they didn't know that there was some competitive product coming out there or some different way of handling things, or a different way. And today, information is such a critical aspect of every industry that being up to date on what's going on and what the competition is doing is just totally critical. I think these are very scary numbers.
Yeah. We also asked about the shortcomings, what you're trying to overcome in terms of what customers are looking for. And also this was, I think, pretty predictable. About 68% said that the search needs improving. I think that's a low number. When I look at some of these, especially corporate websites, the searches are pretty abysmal and could use a lot of improvement. Customers can't build their own PDFs, which is, of course, what dynamic publishing tools provide you. The current content is not what the customer really needs. I thought that was really fascinating. They wanted faceted search. That's part of this, this bigger issue about how we can make things more findable. Content in general needs to be more findable. Customers are asking for videos. Customers want topics. The customers are looking for better information on the web. We had a pretty big other category, and it was really all over the place in terms of what people felt were shortcomings. A lot of it was because the content creation process is not where they would like it to be. And then I had this, we talked about these major impediments that people keep bringing up each year. Lack of time and resources, limited access to users. I find that so painful because it's so important. Like Mark, you just said, information is an important corporate asset, and yet we hear people over and over again being told they're not allowed to talk to customers. We saw numbers of issues around tools. Tools are fixable. There's better tools all the time. No reuse mechanisms in place. Still using cut and paste content specifically designed for print or PDF. Not designed to be topic-based. We're writing books, not topics. And we lack corporate sponsorship. There it is, for restructuring our content.
Right, and I think that last point is really a lack of knowledge. I think people focus on what they're used to focusing on, and the information being the criticality of information is, I wouldn't say it's a recent phenomenon. It's a phenomenon of the last 10 years or so, and I think part of that lack of sponsorship is just a lack of knowledge of what's available and how much it could improve the process if you took advantage of the newer technologies and newer architectures of keeping information together.
Yeah, exactly. We did hear some good news, however. Some groups, I think we had some fun quotes. We are in good shape. We're in the middle remedying both of these issues with great solutions coming up. We're rewriting content into modular structures that will allow them to be linked dynamically based upon the repair needs of the customer. We're in the process of restructuring our content to support topics instead of books, topic reuse, and dynamic building of books as needed. Those are really, I think, the positive side of this. We did ask about making a business case and why you needed to make a business case. We gave a lot of possible answers. The top one was we must change now or we're going to be left behind. Customers are demanding information in new ways, came almost at the same point. And, you know, the competitor issues tend to be low because I think people don't know. No business crew requirements. That's a sad story because we're not moving. Or service calls are becoming too expensive. This is the range of things that we heard from people. And the plans for the future, you know, really meaningful. That some of the groups say we want to do everything in-house. Given that they don't have time or money, that seems to be contradictory. An increasing number from previous studies said they're going to pursue a hybrid approach, getting help and getting training for their team on how to do this. I think those are probably more reasonable solutions than trying to do everything yourself. Not so many who are going to say we're going to outsource everything. I think that would be unusual.
Right. I mean, this at the risk of sounding self-serving. The converting and moving things together and are all very specialized skills that often are not found in a company. There's a big learning curve, and just like I mean, most companies would not, if they're building a new building, wouldn't hire a bunch of architects and bring them in-house and build their own architecture team. They would go to a company that does that specifically. It's probably not the best use of resources to assign people to this when they really could be working in the main line of what the company does and keeping their information together and all the things that they already have all the learning curve on. So I mean, the hybrid approach is probably, you know, the sanest approach, because then you can get the best of both worlds and done, and that's probably also the cheapest solution. It gets there the fastest.
Well, we finally asked people what they needed in order to make these changes, and here's some of the things that they said. 44% would like more staff. 51% want better tools. But then we get into, and 29% said help selecting the right technology, which I think is important. But the things that I think that are really important to this is the compelling story to senior management. We're seeing some change, some sort of breaking down the barriers here, because I'm hearing statements from our colleagues and clients who say, well, our CEO has now said that content is an important asset, or that content is the way better content is the way to meet our customers' needs. And, a few years ago, we never heard that, of the CEO actually making that statement. So I think that there's a loosening of the perspective of senior management. They're hearing a lot from from Harvard Business Review, for example, that says content is important and strategic. However, getting it from the C-suite down through middle management and to your own staff still becomes the issue. A compelling story to your own management, your own line of reporting, and then convincing your own staff that the change is needed.
All right. No, I agree. Those are the key aspects of it here. I mean, being able to I mean, it's not so much that senior manager is blind to all this. I think senior may be waiting for the operating groups to tell a good story and to really sell the concept, because that's really where it needs to come from. And getting staff on board is always been a difficult issue, but it's just absolutely critical. And I think we've found, and John, I think you found also, that once a group has moved forward and has had the right training and is moving people along, people do come along. It's just a general resistance to change, but people do eventually see that their lives are better and they're getting more out of it.
The world's changing. You know, I keep asking them, you know, what are their own preferences? A lot of times in organizations that are still, you know, printing books, their own preferences, especially the younger people, are everything has to be online. You know, but pay attention to what's around you. And we're open for questions. I have please type your questions into the question box. We'll be looking at those as we go along. And I wanted to mention two things, was that there is a press release coming out soon from DCL. Adam and the team at DCL are preparing a beautiful PDF of a chart with all of these results from the survey, kind of an infographic that you can pick up at the conference, or you can, I'm sure, get a copy online. And then I'll be publishing the synopsis, the article talking about the results of the survey, in the upcoming CIDM e-news. And if you don't get that e-news today, comes out first of each month, you can sign up for it on the CIDM website under Publications tab, and get a copy of this report as soon as it's ready, and it'll be out next week, actually. The report on the results that we have from the survey. So there's that detailed information that you need to build your business case with your management. And Adam, I think we might have a few questions.
Yes, Joanne, and first of all, thank you, both you and Mark, for this very informative webinar. The first question that has come in is, what tools were mentioned for video?
Well, we had mostly Camtasia, I think, was the primary one I saw. Other than that, it would have been like Photoshop or so I think that there's a need to know what tools are available, because, you know, what Camtasia is going to give you is it's for software, a shot of the screen of, you know, showing, you know, how to click on buttons on the screen, or type things into a form, or, you know, what the interface looks like. But I didn't see any particular, you know, like video editors or anything of that sort. So it sounds like it is a green field for suggesting new possibilities.
Great. Thank you, Joanne. The next question that's come in is, maybe change the term reuse to dynamic reuse to differentiate between cut and paste and true reuse?
I think that's a good suggestion. You know, that you know, I think that you know, people are beginning to understand that we mean dynamic reuse, but I think that is a really good suggestion, that we could change that, because that's really what we mean. If you're reusing by cut and paste, you're probably creating more problems than you want, because now you've got multiple versions of the same content that all have to be updated if something changes.
Right. I think dynamics are what we're talking about, but what exactly the term is, I think, does people use in different ways. But I mean, when I use it, I have the same material, and now I can distribute it in many different ways. So you know, it can go on my online, or it could produce a PDF. It could produce any of those other things. So, but it could also, I think it's also being used in a term of if you have a collection of topics and you're let's say you have you're producing a manual, a repair manual, online manual for several different models of something. You're reusing different topics for all those models while other things get pulled out. So it's sort of a term that can be used in a few different ways, I think.
Yeah.
But we want to use it electronically when we use it.
Well, and you also DCL also has a really nice analysis tool called Harmonizer. My clock is going off here. The birds are singing. But the Harmonizer tool, which we've used on projects, lets us look at, like, massive amounts of PDFs or FrameMaker content, the legacy content, and try to figure out where the same content is being reused. And that is so beneficial when you're doing a project, to say, okay, we're finding, 35 instances of this same set of steps being used, the 35 different places in our content. They're the same, or they're almost the same, or they should be the same. Can we make them the same and then create it once and then reuse it in all the places? So I really recommend, looking at your content, getting help, right? Getting help from tooling to analyze the content and find out what the opportunities are.
Yeah, I mean, we found on certain collections of data that 50% of the material is really not unique and can be eliminated because it already exists someplace else when you move to a topic-based system. So there's a lot of reusable material available in many different context sets.
Well, excellent. Thank you, Joanne and Mark. The next question that has come in is, what are web appliances and what are the 5 new products?
Yeah, we've been talking about the dynamic publishing systems, and I'm not going to claim that I know about all of them, but the ones that you can come and see at the conference will be SuiteShare from Suite Solutions, WebHelp from Mecon, Titania from Oberon, Fluid Topics from Antidot, and Live Content from SDL. I just, and if I have a 6th one, Bluestream, who we did a webinar with last week, has a dynamic content facility, part of their content management system. I'm sure there are others, so certainly don't say that these are the only ones. Those are ones we've studied. We've done surveys and, and tried to understand what they do and what's different among them. But these are all really good tools, and they're definitely things that you should be looking at.
Great, thank you. The next question that's come in is, are there ready-to-deploy dynamic publishing systems?
Yeah, well, that's the same list. That would be the same list I just... When I say appliances, it means they're ready to go. I mean, you just drop them into your website. Now, do you have to prepare? Do you have to do you have to determine your taxonomy, figure out metadata, maybe use data subject scheme to assign metadata to your content? Do you need to set up faceted searches? Do you need to have a program, to personalize the content? Yes, all of those things. But these are appliances. They have all the parts. You're not creating it from scratch.
Great. Thank you, Joe. And the next question, and the last question that's come in, is, are there any tools of which you are aware that allow searchability within video and audio?
Oh, I do not know the answer to that question.
Yeah, and I can't say I really do. I haven't. I mean, there's a couple of tools that we've used for some to do specific things, but we haven't really. We're not at a point. We haven't even done a study of them or anything like that. There are a lot of tools out there. Some of them are very inexpensive now. But yeah, you can have your own little video studio running off a phone. But yeah, I haven't really studied other than some simple things that we've needed to do.
One response we're getting from David, who's my video person here in this session, is you can put time markers in the video, yes, to see where things start and stop, especially in long videos, since nobody wants to sit down and watch a 45-minute video. But you know, when we look at something like, you know, we know that Google is able to find information in pictures, right? We know that the search is extended, so there's got to be things like this that can look at findability. I mean, what do we have? You know, YouTube is eminently findable because people put metadata. You know, it's about this. Again, I think it comes down to metadata assignments to say, you know, what is this video or audio or information about?
Well, great. And Joanne, Mark, that is all the questions we received today. So thank you both again for this wonderful webinar.
Thank you all for attending.
Okay, thank you.
Giving out, Adam, we're going to be giving out the links to the recording?
Yes, tomorrow everyone will be receiving the link to view the recorded version of this webinar via email, figure around 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And with that being said, I just want to let everyone know that DCL's next webinar will be Wednesday, April 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, titled Amplify HTML5's Features Using DITA's Form. It's being presented by Don Day, founding chair of the OASIS DITA Technical Committee. And thank you everyone for attending. This concludes today's broadcast.
Thank you.